So today, we have the topic of, and if this is going to go here. There we go. Comforting one another. And so as we're talking about comforting one another, I want you to think about who in here is a person of comfort? Anybody? I would qualify myself as a person of comfort. I like being comfortable and comfortable things. And we have to be careful because sometimes comforting one another turns into confronting one another rather quickly. So a quick story with this. In college, I had a friend who approached me and she said, I'm going through a really hard time. And I said, okay, well, I'm happy to talk. Let's just sit down. I'm trying to be a good friend. She starts to explain that she's had a really difficult time with her family and finances and telling me this whole story of everything that she's gone through and that she really can't pay for college anymore because she doesn't have the financial means. And so I'm empathizing with her and not expecting what came at the very end. She said, I thought about this a lot, but I'd like for you to be the co-signer on a loan for me. And I looked at her and I said, how do I transition into this conversation? And so all of a sudden, confronting or comforting turned into a more confrontational conversation. I had to tell her, I love you dearly, but I don't think that's the best thing for our relationship, right? And so this life, just in general, has a lot of uncomfortable situations. So I think when we're talking about comfort, we have to talk about discomfort at the same time. How many of you have watched The Office? Okay, I love The Office. We all know that Michael Scott equals uncomfortable, right? And in one particular episode, he had promised these kids that he was going to pay for their college tuition. And he had told them, as kindergartners, don't worry, you're set. I'm going to pay for all of your tuition. College is taken care of. They were underprivileged kids. They loved this idea. They were so excited. So fast forward a few years. It's almost graduation day. They're sitting in the classroom. They asked Michael Scott to come back because he's been their hero this entire time. And he now has to face this reality after figuring out how much college actually costs for 20 or 30 students, that he cannot pay it. Okay, you're going to make me say it. I'm not going to pay for anyone's tuition in front of the entire class. And all that he can really offer them are laptop batteries. He says, you're really going to need laptops for your college, and I'm going to give you some laptop batteries so that you can make that happen. And that's the only thing he's going to give them. Talk about uncomfortable. Have you ever been in other situations where you hear phrases like, we need to talk, from your significant other? Or, we're friends, right? Those usually lead into some uncomfortable conversations. How about opening gifts in front of people? I have 3 kids myself, so I've been through 3 baby showers and then some, and I can tell you opening gifts for a few hours in front of people gets a little uncomfortable. How about meeting your future in-laws for the first time? Those are some uncomfortable situations. I can tell you the first time that I met my in-laws, I was a student missionary at the time, on the island of Majuro, which is kind of right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean between Hawaii and Japan, okay? I started dating this guy, whose name is Jeff. And we had only been dating for maybe 4 or 5 months, but during Christmas break of that year, we said, well, maybe it would be good for us to meet each other's families. And our families, being the families that they are, wanted to see us midway through the year that we were going to be abroad. And so they said, well, we'll meet you in Hawaii if you can make it to Hawaii. Okay. So Jeff and I bought some tickets. We go to Hawaii. It's the first time I'm going to meet his parents. They're staying at a hotel. We walk up to the hotel. I'm being introduced to his parents, and they're so excited to meet me, right? We have a great first day together. We spend all this time together talking and chatting, and I'm really trying to do my best to put my best foot forward, right? I'm going to stay with them, though, for a night or 2. And at the end of the day, the realization comes that there's only 2 bedrooms, but there's 5 of us, including Jeff's brother. And so I'm thinking to myself, where am I sleeping? But I didn't want to ask the question, right, because that would just be uncomfortable. And so we get to the night, and they say, well, what we're thinking is, you can sleep in the room with us, my mother-in-law says, and Jeff and Brian can sleep in their own room. I'm not kidding. This is a true story. And so I say, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? I don't have money to go buy my own room or rent, and I want to make a good first impression. And so I say, okay, Jeannie, sure, let's do it. And so my mother and father-in-law sleep in their bed, and I sleep on the pullout that is in their room. I didn't get very good sleep that night. But this life puts us in uncomfortable situations, and discomfort is just part of it, right? So let's take a step back to the story of humanity. And when we look at what our story is, it starts with the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden was a paradise. It was perfect. God creates us in his image. He has a plan laid out. He loves us. He wants time with us. It's beautiful. It's picturesque. That is contrasted with the scene that we enter into today for our scripture, which is the Garden of Gethsemane. And the Garden of Gethsemane was the garden that Jesus went to with his disciples on the night that he was arrested and taken. And so the verses that we are covering today are Mark 14, 32 through 41. And within it, it says, there they went to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus said to his disciples, sit here while I pray. He took Peter, James, and John along with him, and he began to be deeply distressed and troubled. So we all know what kind of happens in that time, but we're going to talk a little bit more about it. The contrast between the Garden of Eden, this perfection that God had originally intended for us, and the fall that happened after sin entered the world. We live in a broken world. Our experience is one of brokenness. It's one of discomfort. He promises us that it will not be comfortable. The Garden of Gethsemane represents perhaps much of what our own experience is like. It was a time for Jesus of great sorrow and distress. He says, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. He fell to the ground, it says, with sorrow. In Romans, it says that we know that the whole creation has been groaning. Our creation groans because it knows that it's not perfect. We seek restoration. We seek a time when things were perfect. When Jesus was in this moment of crisis, there's a few things that he did that are telling to us about what we can do in our own experience of brokenness, in our own lives of when we experience crisis. One of the things that he did here that stands out to me is he says to his community, his friends, stay here and keep watch with me. He sought companionship. That is so like us, isn't it? How many of us have ever experienced grief, insecurity, a sense of weakness? And yet, at the same time, how many of us mask that? Right? If somebody says, hey, Dawn, how you doing? Hey, Bonnie, how are you? Hey, Yesenia, how are you? What's my response going to be usually? Fine. I'm okay. Everything's good. But that's not true all the time, is it? It can't be. And so here we see Jesus in a moment of vulnerability where he is asking somebody else for help. Hey, can you just stay and pray? The irony in this is that the very companions that have been with him all these years, teaching and loving him, are the same ones that fall asleep. Right? So we experience the same sorrows, that same experience that Jesus did. And that is an amazing connection. He is fully human, fully God. And so it takes us into another point. Amidst all that, Jesus said, Abba, Father. Everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. He takes a moment and says, Abba, Father. He remembers his sonship. He remembers his inheritance. He remembers he is creating an inheritance for you and I. So let me ask you this. Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, okay, he passes away. Suddenly tonight you get a phone call and it says, hey, you are now the heir of Jeff's estate. You now have this huge inheritance. You're set for life. You don't have to worry about a thing. You wake up the next morning feeling really great about yourself, right? And about your life. Your outlook is really positive. Why do we not have that same outlook right now? We have been granted an inheritance, immeasurably more than any fortune on this earth could possibly give us. It says the Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children. Now, if we are children, then we are heirs. We are heirs of an amazing kingdom. What God tells us is this. He says, we were uniquely and intentionally created by God for love, community, and purpose to bear his image and glorify him through worship. That is the message that we receive from the Bible. I would argue that our society, our world, would tell us a different narrative. I would argue that our world says we were accidentally mass-produced by chance for species advancement, popularity, and success, to bear our image and glorify ourselves through worship. How different is that reality from the reality that Jesus was thinking about when he cried out, Abba, Father? Was he thinking about this? No. He was thinking about God's love. When we are in our times of crisis and we feel surrounded, do we think about this? Or do we think about our true inheritance? Because I'll tell you, if you are looking for comfort, there's a lot of different places you could go. You could first go to your bank account and see how much you have there. Take comfort in your finances. If you have a nice nest egg, you're going to be set. It's okay. Don't worry about it. But hey, not all of us have that, okay? So if that's not it, maybe take comfort in your image. Go to Facebook. Go to Instagram. Do you have the right face there? Do you have the right image? You can post all the perfect pictures that we want, that you want. Take comfort in your image. And if that's not enough, because, not all of us are made in a way that we want to share our image, okay, then how about take comfort in busyness? Take comfort in your schedule. Jam-pack it with extracurricular activities, work, and everything else that you possibly can to just keep yourself busy. And if that's not enough, take comfort in comparing yourself to somebody else. There's got to be somebody else out there that's doing something worse off than you are that will make you feel better, right? We can compare ourselves. And are we not encouraged to have that perspective? Are we not encouraged to have this definition of our identity, of our inheritance? But it is not true. It will not provide comfort because we know that all of those things at some point are lacking. They leave us empty. However many times we go to our bank account, however many times we go to Facebook, however many times we fill our schedule, we will always need more, want more. And therefore, the only true definition is the one that God gives us. Sometimes I have thought to myself, well, I am far from perfect. I don't have all the answers, God. I don't really know how to do that. I feel weak. Now, God, what? I can't come up and speak to people. I'm not good enough. God, I can't be a Christian and go to church every weekend. I'm just too busy. God, I can't, whatever, fill in the blank. I can't do things outside of my comfort zone. It's too uncomfortable. He says, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. He says, all of your imperfections, all of your weaknesses, all of your can'ts, all of your insecurities, Bring them to me because those are the things that I love to work with. My power is made perfect when you are weak. I love that. That gives me comfort. I can deal with that. I can take my imperfections because I got lots of them. And so ultimately, this is what God says. He says, I love you. I choose you. So in the moment, in the Garden of Gethsemane, when Jesus is there, he has to make a decision. He asks God, Abba, Father, take this cup from me. Tradition back in the day was that the head of household, or the father, would give a cup of some type of liquid to the family members or the guests of honor at the house. And so then the head son, or the oldest son, or the guest of honor would take that cup in appreciation of what has been given to him. So when Jesus is referring this cup, commentary says that could have been something that he was referring to. It's a cup that his father is giving him, and yet it's bitter. And he knows it's bitter, but he says, you know what, I will take it anyways because you say so. That is the story of love that compels us forward. It is God's love, Jesus' love, that he chose to do it anyways. That he chose to suffer anyways. That he chose God's will, not his own, out of love. Right? And this is our concluding thought here. That we become what we believe. That if we are going to believe in a God who is our comforter, we become comforters. If we are going to believe in a God that is love, we become love to others. God died, Jesus died for us. For one died for all, and truly his choice impacts our future. He's the one that gave us hope. Without him truly understanding what his own experience was and taking it on and choosing to be uncomfortable, his discomfort is our comfort. His choice of remembering his identity and his inheritance gives us our identity, our inheritance. He is the only source that will ultimately bring this to fruition in our lives to provide comfort. For Christ's love compels us because we are convinced that one died for all. So, as we conclude, the thought that I want to leave you with is this. If we are going to become what we believe, what will your source of comfort be? What will you choose? Will you choose the narrative that we are told in this life of just acquire more, get more, be more, have an image? Is that the narrative? Or is it the narrative of God loves you because you're invaluable, because Jesus died for you? And that's the image that we will choose to take on and then reflect. What will your source be? I'm encouraged by the fact that Jesus knew his source, and that if we follow his example, we will be able to be comforters and experience true comfort.